Matt Fan, joined by Brian Phillips this week. No Evan Lazar this week. He's off jaunting away in the island somewhere, but we do have a very special guest on with us to start the show tonight. He's the voice of your New England Patriots, and for my money, the best play-by-play guy in the NFL. The man, the myth, the legend, it's Bob Socci. Bob, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, Matt, and I appreciate the introduction. I think you'll have plenty of people who would dispute that, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Their opinion doesn't matter. So, Bob, obviously we're in the throes of the midseason here, but we wanted to get your opinion. Taking a look at the Patriots roster first off, it's been a pretty busy offseason. Can you talk to us about what your thoughts are around what the Patriots have done so far?
Yeah, Matt. I mean, it really has been a fascinating offseason, and it really started, of course, with the Patriots splashing free agency. And I guess actually to take a step back, they made the trade for Dwayne Allen, and then they made the splash with the signing of Stephon Gilmore. And certainly that raised the antenna for a lot of different people who follow this team closely. And, of course, for a lot of fans who began to wonder, wait a minute, is this a shift for the Patriots? Because they went out and spent more on Stephon Gilmore than they ever had on anybody in free agency. And, with Malcolm Butler at that point kind of still in limbo in terms of his future with the Pats, that was a big move for them. And they got out in the free agent market right away, and they brought in Gilmore. They had made the trade for Allen, kind of a preemptive move, anticipating the loss of Martellus Bennett moving on from him before he would sign with the Green Bay Packers. And then they used those first two draft picks, as we know, to acquire Brandon Cooks and Coney Ely. And although they took only 4 players in the draft, I think when you look at it in retrospect, with their free agent class of rookies as well, they don't have too many spots up for grabs. And I think at the time of the draft, and this would not include the guys who were on IR at the time, Rob Gronkowski and Jonathan Freeney, 46 of the 53 players who were on that Super Bowl roster on the day the Patriots played the Atlanta Falcons, 46 of the 53 on the Super Bowl roster were in the fold when the Patriots went into the draft this year. And again, that didn't include Gronk and Freeney. So you had a strong nucleus coming back to this team, even with the loss of the aforementioned Bennett and Logan Ryan. And I like what they've done in the draft, frankly. Now, granted, time is going to tell, but they got 2 offensive tackles. We know that may not be an immediate need for this team, but certainly it gives them time with Dante Scarnecchia and someone who apparently is his understudy on that staff, and Cole Popovich, a chance to work with Tony Garcia and Connor McDermott. They brought in some other undrafted players as well. Perhaps in a year's time, one of those guys will develop into a tackle of the future for this team. And certainly there's a lot to like about their first pick overall in the draft. And I think in Rivers, you've got a guy that has a great skill set athletically, certainly made an impression on the Patriots based on how he performed in their eyes against the competition he faced in the Senior Bowl to kind of back up what they thought in the lower level for Youngstown State, but also the fact that he played for Bo Pelini, the coach with pro experience, that he's a long arm defender. And granted, he may fit more inside than outside for them, but nonetheless, here's a guy that came out of a good program, had a good junior year, beset by injuries in his senior season, but played well late in the year, again on that all-star circuit, and I think there's a lot to like about him as well. But time is going to tell, of course, for all those guys and all the moves they've made.
Bob, you mentioned speaking with Dietrich Wise today and both of the tackles. One guy that it seemed like really is handling it pretty well is the Patriots' final pick of the draft, Connor McDermott. When you look at him, and you mentioned Scarnecchia and Popovich and getting to work with him, do you see him and Tony Garcia kind of as the guys that are going to be the tackles of the future? And another thing, just kind of, you've been there to talk to all the rookies. How quickly do they get these guys indoctrinated? It seems like all of them are already speaking like seasoned veterans in the Patriot system.
It doesn't take long, that's for sure. When Rivers and Garcia came in, and I had a chance to speak with them at a stadium event for one of the Patriots clients about an hour after they got off the plane, or at least got into Foxborough. They were wide-eyed, and although in Garcia's case far more reserved than Rivers, nonetheless at that point it's always interesting to me because you get these guys and it's been a whirlwind for them, and I thought they handled themselves well, but certainly a little bit different than the next time you talk to them, where they now know that what college is behind them, and it's all about getting better, it's all about learning, it's all about getting in the playbook and delivering a lot of the answers that we hear time and again from Patriots. I still think it's funny. I remember when Shaq Mason was a rookie a couple of years ago, and I think the line of the day for all the rooks that year was just try to get better. Just try to get better. And finally, somebody a bit frustrated asked him, "Well, how's the food?" And he said, and he smiled after a long pause. He said, "I'm just trying to get better." So, it doesn't take them long. I will say this, that I thought Wise today was a little more expansive on his college career at Arkansas than we usually hear. Again, I think by the time players get to Foxborough and start to get in the program, they understand, hey, nothing you've done heretofore matters. And it doesn't serve our purposes for you to spend much time reminiscing about your college days. But he had some interesting things to say about the program at Arkansas and how he felt that it helped him. He certainly shared some. That being said, I think with the Patriots organization, it is different than most, if not the vast majority of teams in the NFL. So there's always an awakening for these guys in the NFL, but especially so, I think, for a team and an organization like the Patriots.
Nice. Hey, Bob, Brian here. I wanted to shift gears a little bit and just kind of touch on your background and history. You are what we refer to in the industry as a grinder, coming up through the ranks of minor league baseball. Tell me about your journey through the bus leagues and specifically the Albuquerque Isotopes. I mean, that's awesome. And kind of your path to the booth in Foxborough.
Well, Brian, if you thought my first answer was long, it's something I appreciate you bringing up, because you're right. I think, and this is not to be melodramatic or self-congratulatory as well, but it was a long road to get here, and everybody has a different path to the NFL or Major League Baseball or the NHL, whatever their sport of choice is, or whatever sports they call. For some guys, it's more than one at this level. And for me, you're right, a large part of my resume was built on bus rides through the minor leagues. And it started first as a part-time announcer for the Rochester Red Wings, but then really in earnest in Peoria, Illinois, in the Midwest League. From there to the South Atlantic League in the Delmarva Shorebirds, and eventually the Frederick Keys. And then, as you mentioned, the Albuquerque Isotopes before I joined the Norfolk Tides and had a cup of coffee, to borrow a baseball cliche, with the Paw Sox in Pawtucket. And you learn a lot of valuable lessons on those rides. I remember reading in a book about broadcasters, the late Kurt Gowdy, of course, a legend as an NBC announcer, but of course locally as the voice of the Red Sox. And from his experience, saying that the best teacher, the best education for a broadcaster, a young broadcaster, is being in the minor leagues. And I really believe in that a great deal. Now, that's the experience I had, so I shouldn't speak for others who didn't go the minor league route. But you're really, you're forced to call games in the middle of the summer, or even early or late in the year when the crowds are thin and it's either freezing cold or extremely hot. You've gotten off a bus in the middle of the night with very little sleep. You have to find a way to make a game sound interesting. And to a great degree, a lot of the players that you're broadcasting for, especially when I started back in the mid-'90s, you didn't know much about their backgrounds. And so it really forced you to prepare extra hard and to really fight your way through some, I'm sure, flat-out awful broadcasts at times. But it's a great teacher. You come across every kind of technical mishap that you can envision in this business. And, you find yourself calling games in front of big crowds, small crowds. And I think it really forces you, as I said, to fight through those situations, learn from them. And as you move up the ladder, too, I think it's a frame of reference that allows you to appreciate where you are based on where you've been. So for me, it was a long road, 20-plus years of course, much of it coinciding with my experience calling Navy football, which is very, very rewarding. And I didn't necessarily understand it at the time when I was in it, especially the middle part of that journey. But I look back now and I realize how valuable that was. And I would say this time and again, and I find myself doing it with other young broadcasters that seek advice and whatnot, that every mile, every minute of that trip was worthwhile. Being in the NFL as I've been and having the opportunity to be spoiled like I have with 4 AFC championship games and 2 thrilling Super Bowl wins, the road to get here certainly was worthwhile, longer than I ever anticipated. But like I said, I do it all over again.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. So with that, obviously when you get to Foxborough and you're calling games, it's tough when you get in the booth and, you kind of have to fill it with your personality sitting next to a guy like Scott Zolak having to pick up the slack, right? I mean, tell me about, tell me about calling games with Zoe and what he's like.
He's a blast. Of course, he fills up our booth and I think the adjacent booths with his personality. And, it's a blast. People say you sound like you guys, have a lot of fun. What's it like to work with him? And I always say it sounds just like it is. And Zoe is really much the same person that you hear on the air, off the air. I mean, the only difference is when he's around his wife and kids, he's a little more subdued and, mindful to their needs and especially around his children. But he's a great guy. He's a great analyst. And I think sometimes that gets overshadowed because of the emotion and, at times the reaction to big moments that so many people, of course, have immediately identified Zoe for. He has certainly, I think, become, if not the most popular Boston media sports personality, then among them in terms of, you talk about a guy that was a backup quarterback, really, and here's a guy that grinded too. Zoe spent a lot of time in Providence and doing college games. He broadcast Navy as well. There was a period where we overlapped with one another. He was in the TV booth and I was on radio, and he was trying to make it in this business. Started locally, of course. I think Bob Lobel helped lure him into broadcasting, and he does the talk show on 95, the Sports Hub, 5 days a week. Does any number of appearances. I think he's doing something tonight as we speak to help strike out ALS. Of course, to help defeat Lou Gehrig's disease, alongside the folks from Barstool Sports and alongside the great Pete Frates. So he's somebody who's invested in the community. As I alluded to, he's somebody who certainly is a good family man, and he's a great guy. He's a lot of fun. He probably doesn't party as much around me on Saturday nights before Sunday games as he might have in the playing days when he was hanging out with Drew Bledsoe and Max Lane and some of their Patriots.
Easy Buchanan's is close. That's a good thing.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. It's a great experience. I can't say that enough, and I think we complement one another because my approach is a lot different than some announcers who are very bombastic and I think in my case I try to at least take care of the nuts and bolts and get excited at appropriate times, and at the same time kind of provide that counterweight to Zell when he gets overly emotional and excited. And I can't stress it enough too. Let me say it again, that he's a very good analyst. I think he breaks down a game as well as anybody in the business. And it's something that, as I mentioned earlier, gets overlooked sometimes, but it really shouldn't.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One last quick one, and we'll let you go. Bigger shoes to fill: Jimmy Garoppolo filling Tom Brady's, or a rookie Bob Socci filling the shoes of legend Gil Santos?
Well, first of all, let me say this: I still don't think that I filled Gil's shoes, and nor will I ever. I just tried to make my own footprints in the booth because he is still the voice of the Pats, in my opinion, voice of football in New England. He's a Hall of Famer. He's in the Pats Hall of Fame, one of the 2 contributors to go with 23 players, soon to be 24, when either Raymond Claiborne, Mike Vrabel, or Richard Seymour are inducted, of course, in the class of 2017. That being said, Gil Santos did not quarterback the Patriots to 5 Super Bowl championships. Gil Santos did not quarterback the Patriots to a 16-0 season. Ooh. Nor did Gil become a 4-time Super Bowl MVP, including twice, in fact, in a span of 3 years by leading the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, first against the Seahawks and then topping it against the Falcons. So I think that being said, that Jimmy Garoppolo, if indeed that's the way it works out, if Jimmy Garoppolo has to follow Tom Brady, then that order will be a lot taller than mine, which was, at the time extremely daunting and, almost insurmountable in my opinion. And as I said, I think the best thing about it for me is that, I didn't have to, in the end, scale that mountain. I could go around it and try to carve my own path. In Jimmy's case, here's a guy that has a lot of intangibles. He's very well respected in that locker room, I think. I think he's a guy that's come in and gone from, a very base level of what a quarterback's responsibilities are at a lower level of college football. And by that, I mean, standing in the shotgun, not under center, not really calling plays in a huddle or identifying protections, to grasping and, showing at times last year when he had an opportunity on the field that he could master this very complex offense for the Patriots. And then beyond that, I mean, he's a bright guy. Obviously the looks go with the position for him. He's kind of got that matinee idol looks and a little bit of innocence to him. And he's somebody who I think, would be embraced, but he would obviously would have to back that up, with his performance. But we're still not there yet. And we're going to see, I think, over the course of the next 12 months or so, without overstating it, an extremely interesting period for this football team as we see what the Patriots do this year under Brady, and of course, then following the season, assuming Tom stays healthy all year, with how they handle the situation involving him and Jimmy. Of course, whether to franchise him or to make a move with one or the other. But it really is a fascinating period, and I didn't think we'd get to this point a few years ago when they drafted Jimmy, but here we are.
And you can follow along with all of it right with Bob. He'll be calling the games with Scott Zolak all year. Bob, thank you so much for the time. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go?
Anything that I want to plug? You know what? I would just say, keep tuning in, or is that the right terminology? Keep downloading this podcast. Continue to log on and stream. It's good to hear your voice, Matt. Nice to talk with you, Brian, for the first time. I'm glad that, Matt, you're getting this opportunity because I know how hard you work down at Gillette, whether it's the Revs or the Patriots, and have a lot of respect for the way you carry yourself. And I also want to add that everyone should join me somewhat belatedly in congratulating you and your wife on the birth of your first child.
Thank you very much, Bob. I very much so appreciate that. Just trying to follow in your footsteps, folks. Like I said at the start, there's no better play-by-play guy in the NFL, really in any sport, than Bob. He's the best. Get out there, follow him on Twitter, @BobSocci. Bob, we appreciate the time. I appreciate the kind words and the congratulations, and we'll talk to you down the road here.
I look forward to it, guys. Thank you very much, Matt. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Have a great night. And we're going to transition right out, Brian. And
all right,
Brian, we're going to get into a pretty big topic. And, we're going from feel good with Bob Socci to not feel so good with Charlie Rose, talking with Gisele Bündchen, Gisele Brady. And Gisele, if you haven't heard the sound yet, I don't know where you've been, but saying
and Walter Payton wouldn't get drafted.
Tom Brady had a concussion last year, and she just barely stopped herself short of saying he has concussions every year. First, give me your thoughts on it, and do you think this is as big a deal as people are making it out to be? Do you think that the NFL might try to come after the Patriots on this?
I think the golden rule for the period on the calendar that we're in, post-draft, pre-OTAs, nothing is as big of a deal as it's made out to be. I'm of the realm of people that look at this like, and probably on a different side of it than a lot of Patriots fans, where, when we're talking about concussions, and we spend so much time in New England grilling the NFL on how they handle situations. If it is really truly, if they somehow, if it gets way down the road, if it gets to the point where Tom Brady says, yes, I took, yes, I didn't report concussions or something, I honestly would have no problem with the NFL making an example of him, especially with how hard we are on the NFL when it comes to the concussion issue and it being as big of an issue as it is. I wouldn't have that big of a problem with it. I know that's a little hot takey for Patriots fans, but again, this is us blowing a story up because it's the middle of May.
And we all know you can throw some fire takes out there.
Yeah, it's just I feel passionately about the concussion issue and the way that the NFL handled it in the past, and I think it would be unfair just because of the way the NFL's handled Patriot situations in the past. I think we need to separate that. If this were possibly to become a big story, we need to separate Deflategate, Spygate, all those from what a concussion story would be, because we spend so much time, like I said, grilling the NFL on how they handle these situations. For them to step up and actually take some action, I couldn't fault them for it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too far behind you there. I think that if it came out that he said, yeah, I had concussions and I told the Patriots and they didn't do anything, then go after him. But I can never see that happening. Tom Brady is never going to help the NFL. Bill Belichick is never going to help the NFL. We know that's not going to happen. But this interview, it's interesting because there was the talk of Tom Brady saying that Giselle kind of wanted him done with football. And then he came out last week and said, she's 100%. She wants me to play until I'm 45. And then there's the TB12 Institute, the concussion water, all this stuff. And one sentence from Tom Brady's wife kind of wipes the slate clean on all of that. Concussion water takes a big hit, which, we don't even need to go down that road. But that takes a hit. The TB12 Institute and the videos that they've been doing for the Madden GOAT edition, those kind of take a hit, and it's all because of one sentence. And I don't think she was doing this with any malicious intent. I really don't. But as Andy Hart, a guest on here a few times, likes to say, words have meaning. And these words are going to ring very true if it comes out that he's had multiple concussions, if he has health problems down the road. This could be kind of the power struggle being played out in the media of, one of the most powerful couples in the country. And it's fascinating because you generally hear so little out of her and out of any really wives from Patriots. And to hear that one, it was a bombshell, but nothing's going to come of it. The NFL will do their thing. They'll say, oh, well, we're going to go through injury reports, which, everyone knows an injury report is what it is. I think it was a very interesting comment. It's interesting to think, Tom Brady has never been listed with a concussion, but now his wife's saying he's had multiple. So it's an interesting look into the kind of the deep, dark secret of concussions in the NFL.
Right, and I think it would be beyond naive to think that a player could go 16, 17 seasons in the NFL and not sustain a concussion, especially at, in Tom's case, 16 seasons, missing that one season with the ACL. But it would be beyond naive to think that a quarterback playing that many games wouldn't sustain a concussion or two. I mean, and we know from the research that many guys that get concussions, it becomes so much easier for them to get another one. And then even easier, exponentially easier to get more and more. It's scary. It's really scary. As far as blowing the story up, I mean, because it's, again, it's May. This is what we do. But taking it down the road of, is Giselle trying to get Tom to retire? Is that why they kept Garoppolo? Are all these intertwined somehow? I'm selling on that, but it is definitely concerning, and I think it's actually on the bright side of things. Maybe a silver lining to the entire thing is concussions are being talked about more. And when you're talking about Tom Brady, the face of the league, as far as we're concerned, the face of the NFL, and concussions, that's not a bad thing. So,
it's funny because you hear so little from Brady, especially when it comes to injuries, and all of a sudden, you're getting more and more out of the Brady camp, whether it's him or not. You're getting him acknowledging GOAT status with the Madden cover. Like, if you told me 3 years ago Tom Brady was going to be not only on the Madden cover, but a special GOAT edition of the Madden cover, I'd say never going to happen.
No way.
The TB12 Institute, the Tony Robbins stuff, the commercial with the bubble, which, by the way, he's come a long way, but it's the performance nutrition. It's all these different things that just, it leads me to think, and this isn't a hot take anymore. This has been out there a lot. Tom Brady's come down the stretch here. Whether or not Patriots fans want to admit it, this is all, he may be saying he wants to go until he's 45, 50, 70 years old, but he's coming down the stretch. And all this stuff shows it. He's preparing for life after football. The Patriots did not move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. They're kind of hedging their bets. They don't know. I think you look at Bill Belichick, he takes things year to year. And he said in the past, he said on this very topic, it's better to be a year early than a year late. So it's going to be fascinating to watch, especially every time Tom Brady takes a hit now when he gets sacked. If he takes an elbow to the head, a knee to the head like he did in the Super Bowl, it's going to be broken down 10 ways to Sunday.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with, is 2019 really that cutoff when you look at his contract that does run through that? And I believe there was a week, what was it, maybe towards the end of the year, where there were some rumors about even another extension, and
it was the week after the Super Bowl.
Right, yeah, and that fizzled really fast. He signed through 2019. He's looking at $14 million this year, but it's going to start really getting out of hand too. I mean, after this year, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I know it's north of $20 million. That's why you'd be looking at, when you're looking at, and we find ourselves in the Garoppolo Brady conversation again with cap space, looking at franchising Jimmy and retaining Tom. It's not feasible, and you don't see it. Do they have an abundance of cap space on hand to franchise and trade? Yes, but you really don't want to get caught in that situation having to choose between quarterbacks just because you've got the money to sign both. Once you have that franchise tenders, on a player, that it goes against your cap space, and once the player signs it, then you'd have to make a determination on one of the quarterbacks if you didn't trade one. So, like Bob said. And I'm still reeling from the Bob Socci interview. That was so awesome. But, it's like Bob said, the next 12 months are going to be crazy, and it's going to be something that we probably haven't seen in sports.
Yeah, and folks, just kind of a little tease here. Stay tuned here on Patriot Central Radio. Brian may or may not be getting some comeuppance from a member of the Payton family after last week's super hot take on Walter Payton. Just stay tuned. We got some big stuff going on here. But getting back into Brady, it always comes back to this. It always comes back to, when is he done? It comes back to, when does Jimmy take over? So it's going to be something interesting to watch. And I don't think Brady's going to want to go. His dad is the one who said it. It's not going to end the way we all want it to. He's not going to go quietly into the night. He's not going to ride off into the sunset. He's just too much of a competitor. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that decision and what may or may not happen. So it's something to keep a definite eye on going forward. Brian, something else, I've kept an eye on has been the free agent market. The Patriots, not a lot of space on their roster, but an interesting name came up about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, being Jason McCourty, brother of Patriots safety Devin McCourty, was released by the Tennessee Titans after 8 years in the NFL. Many thought, hey, Jason McCourty, oh my goodness, that's a perfect fit. It almost made too much sense. And then today, Jason McCourty went and signed with the Cleveland Browns, and everybody kind of was a little dumbfounded. he said in a talk with the media there was mutual interest between, and I'm paraphrasing, between the Patriots and himself, but there wasn't enough room in the cornerback room. What's your take on that? And is this room too crowded to bring anybody else in? Or do you think McCourty is more talking there wasn't enough room for him to play the role he wanted to, where he's going to go to Cleveland and be the number 2? He's going to be right behind Joe Hayden. And, he can play all over the field. He said he's going to try to play some slot, maybe some safety. Which do you think it is? And what were your takes on the comment itself?
Yeah, my thoughts are more power to you. First of all, I'm not so sure that it's about having that role. I think it worked out where Cleveland was paying him more than New England was looking to pay him as well. So it was kind of the best of both worlds for Jason. Go be the number 2. Do your thing, man. And as far as the move to safety, I think I'm always a little careful to do that. We hear that a lot with we heard a lot with Revis last year. Oh, it's time to move him to safety. Like it's just a snap thing. At the NFL, nothing is that easy. You need experience doing it. I don't know. Maybe for the McCourties it is, as we've seen. But I'm really
it works well with his twin. So it's
right.
that twin
right.
brain thing.
See, twins now. See the real losers in the whole deal are the Patriots fans who are gonna be at camp and not be able to see twins guarding twins in actual 7-on-7s. When you got the Hollister twins going against the McCourty twins, that would have been amazing. A hole would have been torn in the universe had that happened. But go get your money. And being a 2-year, I believe the reported numbers were 2 years, $6 million. That was likely a little bit more hefty than the Patriots were looking to spend, especially with all the resources devoted to the secondary that we've got going on right now.
Yeah. So you mentioned his contract, and another name you mentioned, we're going down this hole again. It was Darrelle Revis. I am going to stand firm. It was a show that you weren't on. I was on with Evan Lazar, who, again, abandoning us for arguably the best show of the year this week.
Hey, missed Bob.
Missed Bob Socci. Again, thank you to Bob. But I said to Evan, I believe, and I'll stand by this, I think Darrelle Revis will be on the Patriots roster come week 1 of the regular season. Again, hot take alert, sound off the sirens. I think he'll be here. I think that he's going to take probably a veteran minimum. He's getting $6 million this year from the Jets. It makes sense. If he wants to get himself another ring, really, what other teams in the league are there to go to? He could go to maybe in Atlanta, where he'd be more of a featured piece of that defense, or, even Pittsburgh. But the Patriots, again, odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl. I think he'll be here. What are your thoughts on Darrelle Revis? Is he still a viable cornerback in the NFL, or do you think he can't bounce back from that fat and lazy tag that he got in New York? And do you think there's any chance he'll be here?
I'm with you on this one, Matt. I was one of the Revis truthers, all the way through last year, even with some of that tape that made its way onto Twitter, some of those vines when R.I.P. Vine. There were some bad looks out there for Darrelle last year. He was out of shape. Obviously, reports are 15 pounds overweight. 15 pounds is a lot of lbs in the NFL when you're on the outside. And there was just an effort issue in New York. There was an effort issue all over that defense last year in New York. When you look at Muhammad Wilkerson putting up a 40-something on the PFF rankings after signing that $100 million deal, but not complaining. But I could see it happening. The word on the street is he's working with a nutritionist. He's getting into shape. And really the worst Darrelle Revis that you can get is still leaps and bounds better than, in my opinion, a Justin Coleman or, someone along those lines. I think Jason Jones, would still have to have another stellar special teams, season to have him rostered over a Darrelle Revis who's reportedly getting back into shape. But who knows?
Yeah, I mean, you look down the end of that cornerback depth chart, and there's obviously some good players.
Yeah.
You have Gilmore, you have Butler, Eric Rowe is a guy who emerged a little bit last year. Cyrus Jones is still going to get his chance. Jonathan Jones, again, you mentioned Justin Coleman. But I think Darrelle Revis really, I mean, he slots right in behind Gilmore and Butler. And it'll probably be a similar contract to what he took this past time, where all that money is dedicated to another year and the Patriots will never sign him to it. Really kind of a mercenary deal. Let's do this again. Let's win another Super Bowl. This time maybe, come to the Super Bowl party. Don't send your mom. We won't get into that, Darrell. It's okay. Come back home. Come back, Darrell. I think that it would be a good move. And, if he's not looking for a lot of money, it's a move that would make a ton of sense for the Patriots.
Another guy that, bringing up news from the week as far as free agents, a guy that I'm really interested in is this Gerald Hodges from San Francisco, this linebacker they brought in. I haven't heard any further news. I was off the Twitter sphere today, so I don't know if he signed anywhere, if there was any other news anywhere else about him. I know he was taking visits to Jacksonville as well. But the guy was your 21st graded PFF linebacker last year, was a volume playmaker for San Francisco. Of course, on one of the worst run defenses of all time, he didn't have a whole lot of help, especially without Navarro Bowman. But he's an experienced guy who, at this point, when you see deals out there like Zach Brown signing a 1 year, I believe $1.5 million range type of deal, it could be a nice value option. If it depends, of course, on how his tryout went and how they see his fit. But he's also a big time special teams contributor too, and that's where he made his hay with Minnesota before going to San Francisco.
Yeah, and again, that's a spot that special teams linebacker role that's up for grabs. That's going to come down probably to Shea McClellan and Harvey Longy. Guys like that, Trevor Bates, Jonathan Freeney, these spots are up for grabs. These spots aren't set in stone. Really at linebacker, the only guy who I think is set in stone is Dante Hightower.
Let's hope.
It's pretty fluid. I mean, Rob Ninkovich is considered a linebacker. He's a defensive end. Let's be serious.
Yeah.
The only guy I think that's a lock, like a stone cold lock at linebacker, is going to be Dante Hightower. Guys like Roberts, Van Noy, McClellan, Freeney, they're all likely to be on the roster. But I wouldn't be shocked if any of them are gone. So a guy like Hodges who, he's big, he's fast, he's physical. He may not be the best option, but good value option, building some quality depth behind Dante Hightower, building any depth behind him really, is something that the Patriots obviously need to do. And I wouldn't hate the signing. I wouldn't hate it one bit. I know he's not this splash player that everybody wants to hear, but it's something to pay attention to. And we're going over these transactions just to kind of wrap them all together here. The Patriots made a series of transactions today. They announced them on their website, on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff.
A Ferentz. We got a Ferentz.
They signed offensive lineman James Ferentz. Obviously, the connection to Brian Ferentz and Kirk Ferentz and all these guys who have worked with Bill Belichick and work at Iowa, and they do a tremendous job with that Iowa program. So James Ferentz in, tight end Sam Cotton in, and Dietrich Wise all in. Out Chris Barker, who has spent some years here on the practice squad, a guy who a lot of people liked, but in the end, just not necessarily a true roster player. So Barker out, Ferentz, Cotton, and Wise all in. So, I mean, really nothing major there. I don't think any of them have a chance to roster, but
as far as Chris Barker goes, I mean, it's tough to see a guy put in that much time and then get cut like that. I'm not sure if it was one of those failed physical designations or if they're just clearing up a spot for one of these guys. Cotton, the tight end from Nebraska, I believe had 17 catches in 4 years. But Ferentz, it's funny. My piece that I wrote for Pat's Pulpit, plug, a couple weeks ago, where I interviewed Mark Zuzovic, who's a former right tackle, undrafted free agent for the Patriots.
That's my guy.
Yeah, he's the Latvian legend over here, I believe he's from Mount Prospect, Illinois, down the road from me. The guy's lost like 50 pounds since his playing days, and he's still an absolute monster. It's crazy how these offensive linemen drop pounds when they leave. You see Vollmer lately, but James Ferentz he still keeps in touch with, and Ferentz is still doing it. It's his third year. I believe he was with Houston's practice squad last year. And obviously, coming from Kirk Ferentz, the connection with Cleveland under Bill as an offensive line coach in Cleveland. Is there the pedigree from these guys? They know, in talking with Zuzovic, they know that when they go from Iowa to a Patriots, to the Patriots facilities day one, they're going to be prepared. They're not going to be wide-eyed, and they're going to understand the workload when they get there, which is what I found interesting. And it means he's immediately got experience with Dante Scarnecchia. So Dante, it's funny when you talk to him. Dante is the guy that all these offensive linemen there's always it's Coach Jarnecchia, man. It's funny to see.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Zuzovic, nobody appreciated end of roster players, but like myself, like a Zuzovic, Nico Kudavides.
Oh yeah,
people like that. Those were my guys. They were great guys in the locker room, and they were go-tos when you needed an interview, literally needed an interview and had no one to talk to. Them and Danny Woodhead. Just walk down the locker room and get with them. But you brought up Sebastian Vollmer here. It was a great transition into it. Vollmer at the NFL Broadcasting Boot Camp. He's going to be tremendous. He's going to be on some sort of broadcast very soon. A very well-spoken guy. He said his career is done. You gotta tip the cap to him. Injuries and all that, but former All-Pro, a solid right tackle until the latest round of injuries. A terrific guy, a guy who's going to go on to do some great things. So congratulations to him. But yeah, he said he's lost 75 pounds, and that's just been since the middle of the season. So, offensive linemen in the NFL, they play real heavy. It's easy for them when you're not eating 5 meals a day and weighing in 3 times a day to drop those pounds, but it can go one way or the other. So I'm happy to see, in the case of a guy like Zuzovic or in the case of a guy like Vollmer, going the right way, dropping those pounds and getting things done the right way. I think that, the offensive line is an interesting study to look at. With Barker gone, there's some spots up for grabs. Ted Karras kind of has grabbed hold of that super sub role on the interior line. So, Barker and Jameel Douglas and James Ferentz kind of on the outside looking in there. Ted Karras, by the way, my doppelganger. Go look up Ted Karras and look up me.
Wait, hold on.
Breaking news.
You guys told me.
Breaking news.
Breaking news from our producer Brian here.
17.
What's up?
How are you guys?
Good. How you doing?
And Walter Payton wouldn't get drafted.
Well, I'm about to do something. I just talked to JP. I call him JP. We are switching the live feed away from Skype, and as soon as I call him, he's going to answer, and we're going to bring him right on live on air. This is live radio, people.
All right.
Doesn't get better than live radio.
We're going to be talking, so the breaking news is that Jarrett Payton, son of Walter Payton, is going to be live on the show, talk some Patriots running backs, and talk to Brian here. Maybe get a little comeuppance for Brian.
Little education here. So we're going to attempt to try this. The focus is going to be the running back class and everything like that. So let's focus on that. Let me try to get him on now. This is live, so it's going to ring and everything, and I'm going to introduce you two live on this is behind the scenes. Everyone's getting a Facebook Live and YouTube Live of behind the scenes. This is JP. What's going on, my man?
Going on?
We are live on Patriot Central Radio with Matt LePan and Brian Phillips. I'm going to pass it off to Matt LePan. The ball's yours, Matt. Go ahead.
Jarrett, welcome to the show, man. It's Patriot Central Radio. I'm Matt LePan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week.
Hey, no problem. It's kind of funny that we're talking Patriots football, and I'm more of a Bears guy. But you know what? I'm gonna try to help you guys out as best as I can.
Well, we'll get to the Bears stuff in a minute here. I'm sure Brian has filled you in on our show from last week.
Yeah, Yo, hold up,
man.
real quick. Hold up, real quick. So
It wasn't me.
Yeah,
Just a heads up. It wasn't me.
I saw the tweet and it made me think that I totally understand, and it brings me back to earth that, like, my dad is my dad. He's also my favorite football player that I ever had a chance to watch with my own eyes for all that he could do. But as I started to grow older, I had to understand that, like, he's not everybody's favorite running back. And it's just funny that you see stuff like that. And then my dad could play in any era, and he would do the exact same thing if it was now. And there's only a handful of guys that could do that. When you look at some of the great running backs like that played in, I grew up watching Jim Brown and seeing what he can do. You put him in today's game, I feel like he's going to do almost the exact same thing. So, yeah, whatever. So everybody has their own view. It's all good, man. I just know in my heart, 34 is the best, in my opinion.
Hey, Jared, this is Brian. Nice to meet you, man. I'm the guy with the hot take from last week. I'm that guy. But I had the opportunity since putting my foot in my mouth like that. Now, I'm writing up a piece about your dad, and I never had the opportunity. I never took the opportunity to really watch him. So it took about 5 minutes on YouTube for me to be completely devastated when I saw when I really watched him. But really, it was an indictment kind of on how the process these days compared to when your dad was coming out. And I kind of feel like your dad, he was incredible, but he was just born in the wrong generation. If he was still in today's, if he was coming up as a high school recruit these days, he'd had, every, college in the country would be looking at him. And, he'd be on the national stage getting read option handoffs from Deshaun Watson and, not coming from, if he was at Jackson State this year, he'd have a tough time going number 4 overall.
Yeah, I totally get it. Listen, I mean, every era is totally different. I just think that there's guys that transcend when you talk about maybe the draft pick, you never really know, but guys that can play football, it's almost the exact same thing now that I look at it. If you can play, then they'll find you, and that's not how it used to be back in the day. It was you had to have like big hype, and people didn't have the internet, they didn't have all that other stuff. So it's now these kids. Even when I came out in '99, my coach was still sending out VHS tapes to he'd have like 50 of them and ship them out to coaches. And now these kids have Huddle, and all you have to do is just send your link. I mean, these kids now are going into college with 30,000 Twitter followers, 50,000 Twitter followers. Yeah. It's crazy to think about how times have changed, and but I still just believe that there's certain guys that just transcend eras that could play in any era. So it's cool.
Well, real quick then, do you think that's good for football? Do you think that's good for the college game, and then subsequently the NFL? Do you think that the size and speed of the players and this process they go through now helps identify the best guys, or do you think guys get kind of lost in the mix?
I think it's pretty similar. I think you'll probably see just a couple more guys that maybe people didn't know about that might be from a small program in maybe a small town or even in a big city, but still aren't getting the pub that other guys are. But people are checking them out on Twitter and checking out their huddles, so they might get an opportunity. But I think it's pretty much the same. It actually brought it to life this past Super Bowl, and when they had all of the guys that played at historically black colleges that were in the Hall of Fame. And when you start to think about it and start to hear all these names of guys, it brought it to kind of back to earth again, to be like, man, it's a lot of good guys that are Hall of Famers came from smaller schools, not the big schools. And I don't know, we're just seeing guys now that take their games to the next level, and it's totally different now. But guys have the ability now with how you can work out and things that you can do, and kind of the rules of the game as well for receivers. Totally different now than it was back in the day, where people could mug you right off the line. And you can't really do that anymore. So the game has changed, and I think how everything else has changed, I'm cool with it.
So Jared, we talk about things that your dad obviously probably would have been able to play in any era, and we've come to terms with that. Brian, thank you. for looking at this week. One thing that kind of transcends eras here in New England was that 85 Super Bowl where your dad and that team came out and put just an absolute hurting on Patriots fans everywhere and on the area and on generations of Patriots fans until, the current one that doesn't know anything about losses. But, I assume you've taken plenty of time to look back and look at some of your dad's game tapes and all that stuff. Can you talk to me about what he was able to do back in that era, back in that 85 season, back in that Super Bowl? And, one of the things that I look at from that game, and maybe one of the biggest travesties in the history of the NFL, is that he didn't score in that game where he totally deserved to. And can you just talk about, kind of what he was able to do for that era and how he was able to kind of progress the running back position here?
Oh, man, you just gave me like a big, huge softball question right there. So now you served it up to me. I'm about to knock it out of the park. I'm going to knock it out of the park. All right, so first off, it's kind of funny that you talk about how that's kind of left, on people coming up in the 80s and, who saw that team play and what that Super Bowl meant to people in New England. Totally understand. Like, the Bears here in this city in that 85 team you can't go anywhere without people talking about them. People still believe that they won like 2 years ago. That's how we keep talking about it, and it's been years now. So it's tough. And I think as a Bears fan, I look at New England now, and that's what I want us to strive to be. Like, that's what I want. I want Ryan Pace to figure out how. And it's funny how I'm starting to see, and I don't know if people are saying this in Chicago, but I've been saying it, so I'm just going to put it out there. Me and my boy Sean Davis from Down and Distance, my podcast, we talk about how the Bears are basically trying to be the Patriots of the Midwest. And that's over the time that they spent last camp with them, being at their facility, seeing how they do things, seeing how they run things, and how things are going, that you build a system that's good enough to be able to plug anybody into that system. And that's what we're trying to be. And every team wants to have that. But the formula is when you have an unbelievable quarterback who doesn't seem to age at all, and you have a mastermind in Bill Belichick who, when it comes to game plans and figuring things out, he's the best. And we strive to be like that. And it's funny now because with my dad and that whole thing, it's still, I got to go back to the current Patriots team, because that's the situation that's going on with them at running back right now. Like, it doesn't matter. You look at all the guys and how they've been successful. How they've done it is by having guys that fit their system and how they scout. And it's not about where a guy went to school. It doesn't matter where they went to school. It doesn't matter if you're a 5th round pick or if you were not even drafted. It doesn't matter. If you fit what we do, we can plug you in and we'll never miss a beat. And that's the case right now at the running back position for the Pats. They got a bunch of names, and now they've got to figure out, okay, who's going to be the best for our system moving forward. And talking about my dad and how he played the game, I always said he would have been great in the CFL because I played there for 2 years in Montreal and Toronto. And I said, how many yards would he have racked up? Not just running, but catching out of the backfield as well. You only have 3 downs. You have to be able to pass protect. And, after first down, you better know that either he's going to run or you better make sure on your swing you got your hands and your eyes ready, because he'd been perfect for that. Man, my dad would have been perfect in a place where you're able to do a lot of things, and then that's what that system with Tom makes a running back do. You have to be, top-notch. You can't just run the football. You have to be able to catch out of the backfield. I mean, even ask LeGarrette Blount. I mean, yeah, everybody thinks about him as a bruiser. I had him on my fantasy team, so I love him to death last season. He was ripping me off, giving me some tutties and all. I mean, that's my guy. But you look at that. He was still able to – there was something about why. Okay, it didn't work in the first stop. Okay, now guess what? We're gonna bring you back to the crib, and now you're gonna get a chance to be able to do what you do. We trust you, and you fit into our system. Dude, we're good. And every team wishes they can strive to be like that. It's so hard, but the Patriots just have a way of doing it that has been so successful, and that's why they've been so dominant.
Hey, so Jarrett, so you're stepping in for Josh McDaniels here. You're now the Patriots offensive coordinator. How are you deploying these running backs now when you're looking at Dion Lewis, Rex Burkhead, Mike Gillislee, James White? Who's making the club first of all, and how are you deploying these guys?
Oh man,
your boy LG's gone now, so you gotta make up that production.
I know, but I got home and I started to think about it. I was like, what do you do? Because I've been in a situation before where I was in Tennessee with the Titans and trying to figure out, was I going to be there? This is the year that Lindell White got drafted by the Titans. And then, Chris Brown was still there and Travis Henry was still there. And I'm thinking, how many running backs are they going to keep? Like, I balled out, but they're not going to keep 4. And they ended up keeping 3. They kept more wide receivers. So, which doesn't make sense to me, just because when you look at if you're going to keep more running backs, hopefully those guys could be a help or service on special teams as well. And you can use those guys. They're natural pass blockers. They don't mind getting hit. They don't mind hitting someone else. Wide receivers, it depends what kind of moxie they have, right? So I look at how it breaks down, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong. How many guys are on the roster heading into camp? 7?
I believe right now they're looking
9
at
roster.
Yeah, 9.
Okay, so so that just think about that. It's a lot of guys, and as I start to kind of like break it down, I mean they tweaked the running back position like right before the draft and go get Mike Gillislee and Burkhead, and those are 2 guys. I think those 2 are going to probably be your starters. I think Gillislee is going to be the guy he's going to kind of be the bruiser. Like they need someone to be able to run. I know he doesn't have the big, huge size. He's only 5'11", but still he's going to have to be that guy that's going to have to get it up inside in between the tackles and do his thing, and also be able to catch out of the backfield as well. And I think Burkhead gives you that ability to have a guy that he's going to get out of the backfield. He's not going to be your power runner, but he's going to be your receiver, and you need him to be able to do that. And then I think about who's going to be the third, because dude, you can't forget about James White. I mean, he just got paid. He just got $12 million.
He just helped win you a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and what he's able to do. So I think those 3, because listen, White's not going to be your guy that's going to have to go underneath and get in between the tackles. He can if you need him to, but that's not going to happen for an entire season. That he'll wear down. But you look at him, he had more receiving yards last year than he did rushing yards. So what his game is, and I think it adds a little variety to what Tom and that offense is going to be able to do by not just him being in the game. Because I think most people would, like for me, when I was watching him in the Super Bowl, because I was at the Super Bowl, when he would come in, I would think pass. It's like the first thing I would think of. It's going to be a pass play. Like, he's in the game. It's a pass play. And then you start to see things change. And now if you add more backs in there, now it disguises what guys are going to do, and you can switch things up a lot more. And I think that's where most teams are always looking for a bruiser and then a guy that's more like a scat back that can move back and forth. You got the thunder and lightning. That's what everybody looks for. You can add a third in there as well. I think then you're golden. But, I mean, do they keep another one? Do they keep, because Dion Lewis he might be the odd man out because he's kind of like White and Burkhead. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He's not your big time like bell cow. So he's found himself kind of like the odd guy out. But you got to have guys for special teams as well. I just don't know how it's did I forget about somebody? I feel like I'm forgetting about a bunch of running backs. Why do you have so many running backs? Why do you have so many running backs on the roster? It doesn't make sense.
Man, it's crazy. That's what Bill does. He stashes them, man. You got Bolden, you got DJ Foster, LaShawn Daniels.
So Bolden is a guy that plays special teams. Like, he's a guy that plays special teams. So do you keep him as well? Or do you keep 4? I mean, I feel like they're going to keep 4 running backs. And
I think it'll be more than that, because then you're looking at, they run with the fullback too. You can't forget James Devlin. And Brandon Bolden is that core special teamer that Bill Belichick values so much too. There might be 6 on this roster.
Okay, so they can't keep all 6. They can't. They got. I think the most you can probably take is 5, because then you can make sure that guys are. And I think that you guys tell me if I'm wrong, because it seems like in places where you see teams that win or that win consistently year after year is the play on not just offense and defense, but how teams play on special teams. And if you have guys that are unselfish, and I go back to the 06 Bears team that lost to the Colts in Miami, and you look at what they did that year, and I'm like, I'm thinking about it going, this is crazy. They ran the football, and they knew what they needed to do, play defense very, very well. And if you can manage to do that, most of those teams find themselves in the Super Bowl or even contention of going to a Super Bowl or a championship game every single year. And it's just amazing to me how you look at what the Patriots have been able to do and the consistency, and even at the position, you just keep filling holes. The Pats are the only team that I know that you have a stud and you're like, we don't really need you, because we could find somebody else a little bit cheaper and we'll be able to manage as well. That every team wants to be like that.
Now, Jarrett, I threw you a softball earlier. This one's going to be a little more hard-hitting here. Here in New England, this week, a freak out has been caused across the NFL because of what Tom Brady's wife, Gisele Bündchen, said on CBS, talking about he had concussion last year and he was never on the injury report, and saying, not quite saying it, but coming close, saying he has concussions every year. Being a former player in the NFL, having gone through, a running back position that you take a lot of big hits, what's your take on the concussion issue in the NFL? Is there a concussion issue, or is it more of an immediate thing? And do you think that this is more of a common practice for a guy like Brady, who has never been listed with a concussion, is sustaining these concussions, but either not letting the team know, or the team doesn't want to put that on injury report?
It's complicated. I really think that there's an issue. I mean, just because, I know of guys that have suffered through, certain things. Dave Duerson, who played with my dad, was depicted into the Will Smith movie. And, it's tough to think about, but the other thing is that every time that you step out onto the field, that there's a possibility that you could receive a concussion. When I was going to Miami, didn't really think about it. That was right before I had 2 concussions before I even left high school. And it wasn't talked about back then. It wasn't talked about. And so now you start to see the conversation being started. And with Tom, I said it yesterday on my TV show, I said it wouldn't surprise me, for as long as he's played, at the high level that he plays and the position he plays, and some of the hits that I've seen him take. I mean, he doesn't get hit hard all the time, but I mean, he's pretty much good. But he's quarterback; he's going to take shots. It's just a weird deal to have your wife speak out, and I don't know if there was something deeper behind this, and don't think that I'm crazy. But to me, Tom's the guy in the NFL. Peyton Manning left, and I'm not saying that the comparison. Peyton Manning was just kind of like the face. I mean, he was the face. He was on every single commercial that was linked with the NFL. Peyton goes. He's still on commercials, but Tom it's his time now. Do they think that this is something that they did to maybe spread light on the situation of what's going on? Or is it something that Tom mentioned to her that worries him? I don't know, but as football players, we know about the repercussions of playing this game. And I think if if you ask 9 out of 10 guys of knowing what they know now, they probably would still play the game. I mean, I don't think it would really change. And I think we're seeing how things affect everybody so differently. And so if Tom's not saying it, I feel like Tom has a lot of communication, and I feel like the organization has so much communication with him and just because of his stature, and like I was saying about being the man, there's no way that they don't know what's going on with him. You know, like this is not like just your 5th round pick that you got from like Louisiana Tech. This is like the prize of the NFL. Like, there's no way that when something's hurt on him or something's going on that they don't know. Like, you can't tell me that. There's no way. I was in the locker room with Steve McNair, one of the greatest quarterbacks that I got a chance to ever play with, and just to see what he was all about. Like, Steve, one day, this is how you know he had this much power. He walked out one day at practice, and we all asked him if we can go in the bubble, and we were having practice outside, and it was cold. He said, let me see what I can do. He walked outside full gear as we're all on the field about to start practice. He whistled at Jeff Fisher and pointed to the dome, and they got all the stuff they got all the pylons and brought him inside, and we practiced inside. That's the power quarterbacks have in the NFL. Depending on how they want to use it, you can't tell me that if something happened, he was dinged up with some type of concussion symptom that his team wouldn't know. It's hard for me to believe that. We're talking about Tom Brady here. We're not talking about Mr. Irrelevant. Who was that year? Wasn't it the quarterback from Ole Miss?
Chad Kelly was Mr. Irrelevant. Yes, he was.
Yes. So it's hard for me to believe that. But you know what? It's hard for me to believe that he's not getting concussions either. So does this go back on Tom not saying what's going on or not communicating? That I just have a hard time believing that there's not a lot of communication going on with probably the biggest star in the NFL.
Folks, he is Jarrett Payton. He is a speaker, philanthropist, entrepreneur, TV and radio host. He has the Jarrett Payton Foundation. Jarrett, what else would you like to plug here? I mean, you do so many different things. What can the people of New England learn more about? What can they potentially help with some of the stuff that you do?
You know what? Just go to my Twitter account @PaytonSun, PaytonSun, and you can kind of like from there you can go everywhere. Like you can go to my foundation. We're just about to have our 6th annual golf outing that we do every single year. I do an anti-bullying campaign here in Chicago called Project No Bull, where I go speak to schools and speak to kids, and we're coming up with more programs for the Chicagoland area. And then also, you guys can't see me on TV, but I'm on TV here in Chicago. I have a TV show called Sports Feed, which we post a lot of cool stuff about Chicago sports on. So it's CLTV Sports Feed on Twitter. And yeah, I just got a new gig. I'm the new 4 o'clock anchor here in Chicago on WGN. So I'm the first African-American to sports anchor ever in WGN history. So to be able to say the first is pretty cool. And let me tell you guys how excited I am and how lucky I am to work for such a great station. And also, I forgot, I also have a radio show too. Called The Beat on WGN on Sunday. So if you go to my Twitter account, you can go through all those things and see all the content I'm putting out on a weekly basis. It's a lot. It might flood you a little bit, but trust me, you'll love it. I promise.
Jerry, you said 4 o'clock on WGN. I'm out here in Schaumburg, man, so I'm tuning in for sure.
Oh, dude, then we're good. Then yeah, you can check me out. You're in Shompton, so you're good, man. All you gotta do is turn on Channel 9.
There you go. Cool.
Well, folks, he's Jarrett Payton. Make sure, like he said, go follow him. It's PaytonSun. He's doing some amazing things out in the Chicago area with his foundation and with all these different media ventures that he has. Jarrett, thank you so much for taking the time this week. And it seems you and Brian have kind of come to terms on how great your dad truly was.
Man, totally opened my eyes.
Hey, dude, you know what? It's all good. You know what? It was actually fun. I want to say thank you guys for reaching out because, I mean, all I do is talk Bears football, so it's actually cool to talk about another team and to kind of like look at another team, because when you're here in Chicago, it's all about the Bears and who they're playing that week. And it was pretty cool to kind of talk to you guys about what's going down on the East Coast, because, man, we're trying to be like them, man. We're trying to be the Patriots of the Midwest.
Man, you got the pieces, man. It'll happen sooner rather than later with that offensive line, man.
All right, man. Take care, guys.
All right, Jared,
care,
thanks
man.
for coming on. Again, that's Jarrett Payton, son of the great Walter Payton. Wow, that was amazing. Talk about a big show here on Patriots Central. We started with Bob Socci. We end with Jarrett Payton. We want to thank both of them for coming on.
Figures that Evan's not on, we have the biggest show ever.
Exactly. Evan not coming back next week.
You guys notice that? Like, Evan's going to be pissed when he hears this show.
Yeah, he is not going to be happy.
I'm a little disappointed in Brian Phillips, if it's okay if I speak out and say that.
Come at me, man.
You know, he's trying to butter him up by saying he lives in the city and he watches them. You know, I mean,
I'm tuning in, man.
you know, I'm disappointed. I don't know if you guys have access to the.
Walter Payton wouldn't get drafted.
I don't know if you hear that. I don't know if you hear that Walter Payton wouldn't get drafted soundbite. You didn't hear that, but you heard it last week. More importantly, what happened, Brian? Well, why did you change your feelings? I mean,
it'll be in the piece, but sometimes you just gotta go to school, man. You gotta be taken to school, and
he's like alt-right version of Jason Whitlock over here. I mean, this is.
But Jason Whitlock's never gonna come out and say it. Say that he completely had his foot in his mouth. I am sticking to the fact that this generation's players, and you'll see the numbers in the piece. I mean, I went and looked at heights and weights and stuff on guys, and it's crazy. But, it's like JP said, there are a few players.
Hey, his name is Jarrett Payton to you. I get to call him JP. You don't get to call him JP. I get to call him JP, all right?
We're going to hang out. We're going to, chill, we're boys now.
Meet him at Tropical Smoothie.
but no, it's he wouldn't go fourth overall anymore, from Jackson State. But and again, we don't have all the information on, there's no combine numbers on Walter Payton and everything. But
were you trying to allude? And I'm trying to be the worst defense attorney ever, and then we're gonna wrap up because Matt LePan has lost 15 pounds doing this podcast, sweating to death. Do you think he wouldn't have done so well because the playbooks and the tablets and the figuring out what he would do before he did it, like Kaepernick had happened 2-3 years ago when Kaepernick had an awesome year, and then all of a sudden there was game film on him, and then they stopped him because they knew what he was doing because he was predictable. Are you attempting to say that Walter Payton was predictable?
No. What I'm saying is he wouldn't get drafted. What I said was he wouldn't get drafted. I never said he wouldn't be awesome. I said he wouldn't get drafted. Now I'm revising that to a late round pick.
Yeah, you it's a slap in the face to Bill Belichick.
I mean, the guy's moves were insane. He didn't have that crazy breakaway speed, but I mean, the guy made.
If the Cowboys could get Marion Barber in the 7th round, who had a couple good years in him, I'm pretty sure someone would have picked up Walter Payton in the early rounds.
Then Walter Payton should have gone to Minnesota, but he didn't get offered. He got offered to Kansas, like Northwest Kansas Tech. It was terrible. You look at the whole era, and the SEC schools just did not give enough scholarships to young black athletes. It didn't matter how good they were. And for like Jared said, for Walter to go 4th overall, it was ridiculous. So, I don't know. I still think he would transcend and he would be awesome when he got the chance, but not 4th overall in this draft anymore. So it was fun though.
It was, and this show was fun, and we've gone way long. We've gone an hour and 20 minutes. So we're going to wrap it up here for Brian Phillips and Brian Harrington behind the glass. I'm Matt LePan saying thank you for tuning in to Patriots Central Radio this week. Evan Lazar will be back next week, but we will see